shop in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. After finding the car, investigators combed the area but found nothing, no other clues to suggest where Ray may have gone, and there were no signs of foul play. The district attorney had simply vanished, and under some mysterious circumstances.
Brooke Beringer. Brooke Beringer was a quarterback for the Nebraska Cornhuskers during the mid-1990s. In 1994, as a junior, Beringer started 7 games that season because starter Tommy Frazier had a blood clot in his leg. Beringer completed 94 of 151 passes for 1,295 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Though he remained as backup quarterback for his senior year, he would get playing time in 9 games, including the end of the Fiesta Bowl against the Florida Gators. Despite having spent most of his college career as a backup, Beringer had shown enough promise that he was expected to be selected for the 1996 NFL Draft. However, before the draft could take place, Beringer was the unfortunate victim in an accident. Beringer was a private pilot of a 1946 Piper Cub airplane. As he was flying it over Raymond, Nebraska, he lost control of the plane and it ended up crashing in an alfalfa field, ending the life of Beringer as well as his passenger, his friend, Toby Lake. The National Transportation Safety Board ruled that the probable cause to be a partially closed fuel valve, resulting in fuel starvation, engine failure, and loss of control. A memorial service for Beringer was held before a crowd of 48,659 on April 20th, 1996 at Memorial Stadium before the start of the annual Red and White Spring football game. As an omen to his legacy, in 2006, the University of Nebraska erected a life-size bronze statue of Beringer with Hall of Fame coach Tom Osborne. NCAA has no power. The NCAA actually having no power in the world of college football is a growing conspiracy due to the shift of the college football landscape. A 2021 Supreme Court decision forced the NCAA to allow college athletes to be compensated by businesses for the use of their name and likeness. ESPN analyst Kirk Herbstreit believed the NCAA has lost power in college football due to NIL and has suggested that conferences may break away from the NCAA. The NCAA has also lost almost every single court case it has fought on NIL grounds. In January of 2024, the state of Tennessee and the Commonwealth of Virginia mutually filed lawsuits against the NCAA for violating federal antitrust laws with its anti-competitive restrictions on the ability of current and future student athletes to benefit from NIL. This stemmed from an attempt by the NCAA to further investigate Tennessee football for possible NIL violations. So far, this case ended in an injunction. The NCAA has faced other internal issues that may have damaged its image and credibility, including investigations into the USC, Penn State, Miami, and UCF programs. Some even say that power conferences are expected to hold authority to create and enforce their own rules, and that the, quote, great split of the Power 5 conferences from the NCAA is no longer a far-fetched idea. Though there is no confirmation that the NCAA is actually losing any jurisdiction over college football, there are some definite questions being raised. Gardner Dow. Gardner Dow was a college football player who played for the Connecticut Aggies varsity team in 1919. His first game was the season opener against New Hampshire State College on Saturday, September 27, 1919. Dow had injured his ankle and was not expected to play, but he ended up traveling with his teammates and chose to play the game. Partway through the game's third quarter, tragedy struck. New Hampshire right halfback Earl Farmer took possession and charged down the field. Connecticut Aggies right defensive end Eddie Voorhees tripped him, but Farmer regained his feet and continued down the field. Dow came in and launched a high-flying tackle, and both players came down with a crash. Farmer was uninjured, but Dow had been knocked unconscious when his head struck Farmer's knee. Witnesses described the blow as, quote, entirely accidental. As Dow laid unconscious, he was moved from the field to the athletic director's office. After the game, Dow was moved again, this time to the Alpha Tau Omega fraternity house. He exhibited no visual signs of injury, and initially it was thought that he had been kneed in the solar plexus until a doctor eventually noticed a bump on his head. The ambulance was called to take him to the Dover Hospital, but before its arrival at approximately 8 o'clock p.m., Dow passed on. Dow's passing was attributed to traumatic brain injury, which contemporary accounts described as, quote, concussion of the brain. On the afternoon of October 1st, 1919, at the same time Dow's funeral was taking place in New Haven, the college canceled classes and closed offices. The Aggies team voted to continue the 1919 season and finished 2-6, winning their 2 final games against Boston University and Rhode Island. On October 6th, Connecticut Agricultural Colleges Athletic Association named the college's athletic field the Gardner Dow Field, which, despite ceasing existence by the 1970s due to construction, a commemorative plaque on the field was hung at the Hawley Armory, where it currently remains. Oregon steals Lee Corso's head. Coming up on the final college game day of the 2010 regular season, the game day crew would be traveling to Corvallis, Oregon, where Oregon State would host their rival, the Oregon Ducks. Along with the crew were giant masks of the game day crew, reflecting the Lee Corso tradition of wearing the mascot's mask, along with the pick of the game in question. However, after the game in which Oregon won 37-20, ESPN workers clearing the set of game day noticed that Lee Corso's head was missing. ESPN host and reporter Aaron Andrews tweeted via Sports by Brooks Live about the incident and persuaded some help in finding it. Later, SB Nation Detroit shared this picture that they found on a message board of someone with an Oregon sweatshirt wearing Corso's head. On the morning of December 6th, the head was recovered near an Oregon State University employee's car at his Harrisburg home. University police cited former Oregon students August Cuneo and Alexander Westerberg as the culprits behind the theft. Because the mask was valued at $5,000, it resulted in felony theft charges for both men due to the head being over $1,000. The 2 former students were given no jail time, but were given 40 hours of community service and were forced to give formal apologies. The Super League. As a direct result of NIL and conference realignment in college football, many college football media outlets have suggested the idea of college football moving to a plan of having a super conference in college football. Using the NFL's AFC and NFC as a reference for this plan, several college presidents and some of sports' top executives have devised a plan dubbed by outsiders as the, quote, Super League. This new system would replace the NCAA and the college football playoff and potentially provide a solution for the hurricane of current and future lawsuits aimed at the business of the sport. It would also put an end to any controversy regarding NIL and transfer portal issues. Proposed by College Sports Tomorrow, this new 70-team league would have 8 divisions, with 10 additional teams being promoted or relegated based on performance on the field. Along with this pitch, each team would receive even shares of revenue by a, quote, player pool from TV money. Along with this would be transfer and roster caps to counter the overuse of NIL. The plan is written for a college sports league that would launch in 2027. There's many more details to this, but this is the basic rundown at a possible super league that could be pushed in the future. However, there is currently no guarantee that this will ever happen in the college football world. 2013 Vanderbilt essay. On June 23, 2013, 4 Vanderbilt Commodores football team players, Brandon Vandenberg, Corey Lamont Beatty, Brandon E. Banks, and Jaborian, quote, Tip McKenzie, carried an unconscious 21-year-old female student into a dorm room in the school's Gillette House dorm. Once in the dorm room, they did many heinous things to the girl. They gang raped, slapped, and took graphic photos and videos of their actions. The victims told the court that one of the culprits, Corey Beatty, urinated on her face and said, quote, "That's for 400 years of slavery, you bitch." The footage found from the suspects' phones was shown in court, along with security footage that caught the actions. The players were dismissed from the football team on June 29, 2013, and banned from campus during the 6-week investigation that followed. On August 9, 2013, they were arrested and all 4 men were charged with 5 counts of aggravated rape and 2 counts of aggravated sexual battery. A few years later, in separate court cases, Each player was given a hefty prison sentence of at least 15 years, with the exception of Mackenzie, who accepted a plea deal in which included 10 years probation and a lifetime registration as a sex offender. The other 3 suspects will also be required to be listed on the sex offender registry. A 5th player, Chris Boyd, pleaded guilty in September of 2013 to being an accessory after the fact by encouraging his teammates to keep quiet and destroy evidence of the rape. He was dismissed from the team but not the university. He testified against Vandenberg and Beatty as part of the plea deal and was sentenced to a year of unsupervised probation. Mike Proliow, the roommate of one of the defendants, Vandenberg, was also in the room when the rape occurred. He also encouraged the players to delete evidence of the crime, making him an accessory to it. He received 1 year of unsupervised probation. Texas A&M nuclear launch codes. This entry is much less clear-cut than the others, but there is a major conspiracy regarding Texas A&M University's access to possible nuclear launch codes. For one, Robert Gates, a former president of Texas A&M University, was a former director of the Central Intelligence Agency, and after he left A&M, became the United States Secretary of Defense. This could be backed by the fact that Texas A&M is one of the only programs in the United States that has direct access to nuclear reactors, including a 1 megawatt reactor on the campus of the nuclear engineering program. Whatever the truth about this may be, I'll leave that up to your jurisdiction. Explosion on OU campus. On October 1st, 2005, the Oklahoma Sooners hosted the Kansas State Wildcats. At approximately 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, shortly before halftime, fans and other spectators heard a loud sound which sounded like an explosion. Some heard very little noise, while others heard a massive boom. As it turns out, a bomb went off near the George Lynn Cross Hall on Van Vliet Oval on the University of Oklahoma campus. The blast took place less than 200 yards west of Oklahoma Memorial Stadium, where 84,501 spectators were attending the game. Spectators were not allowed to leave the stadium at halftime, which caused concern among fans who heard the explosion. No stadium announcements were made until the 3rd and 4th quarters of play, where fans were asked to avoid the south oval west of the stadium. In a press conference the next day, OU President David Boren identified Joel Henry Heinrichs III, a 21-year-old mechanical engineering student, as responsible for the detonation. He made the bomb using ammonium nitrate, which was the same material used in the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing 10 years prior. Thankfully, there were no casualties other than the bomber himself. It is believed that the explosion was actually an accident due to the location of the bombing. Agents with the Norman Police and Bomb Squad said that Heinrichs likely, quote, got cocky with his explosives. A witness saw Heinrichs rummaging around his backpack shortly before it detonated. Following the incident, Oklahoma security was much more intense, adding more security cameras and restricting bags and purses brought into the stadium. Lee Corso Hologram. Like many entries on this list, this was the result of the 2020 college football season. During the season, because of the limited contact that people have with each other due to COVID-19, it was hard to get the crew on game day for the show weekly. However, they found a solution using a hologram. The hologram of Lee Corso was actually seen for several commercials and game day appearances. The commercial aired before the 2021 College Football Playoff National Championship, showing a hologram of Lee Corso in partnership with AT&T's 5G HoloVision promotion. Because of these appearances, conspiracists believe that in the coming years, Lee Corso, who is now 89 years old, will be fully replaced by a hologram in the coming future. There is no evidence to suggest that this will be a done deal, but just like the nuclear launch codes, there are subtle bits of nods pointing to a future possibility. Tyler from Spartanburg. The 2023 season was a season of ups and downs for the Clemson Tigers. Through 8 games, they were 4-4, and the pressure really started to spike on head coach Dabos Sweeney. On Dabos Sweeney's Monday night show called Tiger Calls, fans could call in and ask questions directly to Sweeney. One fan in particular, Tyler from Spartanburg, is a Clemson fan and contributor to The Collins Show. Tyler is known for being critical of the coach, his assistants, and the team. One October night, he called into the show asking him about his $11.5 million salary, and the 4-4 season in particular. The question left Sweeney less than amused. In fact, he was quite angry at the question. causing him to rant to the fan.
Hey, Tyler, I've listened to enough of you, Tyler. Listen, you can have all your opinions that you want, all right? I don't know how old you are. Don't really care, all right? But let me tell you something. We won 11 games last year, and you're part of the problem, to be honest with you, because that is part of the problem. It's people like you that all you do is the appreciation, the expectation is greater than the appreciation. And that's the problem.
He continued his rant for 5 minutes before hanging up on Tyler. He also notably called Tyler a kid. Tyler was actually a 29-year-old Marine Corps veteran and a lifelong Clemson football fan. The rant from Sweeney put him in deeper water, but the water became much more shallow in the coming week as Clemson knocked off number 12 Notre Dame at home. Cotton Palace Riot. Baylor and Texas A&M were two teams that were big rivals in the early era of college football, much more recently being given the nickname Battle of the Brazos. One of the most significant games of the 1926 battle between the two programs, but not for the reason that you would expect. Years prior to the matchup would set up the event. In 1922, a riot broke out after the game and was broken up by fire hoses. In 1924, another riot erupted after the Aggies lost, and both male and female students were allegedly assaulted until the Waco police dispelled the violence. When the 1926 game rolled around, Baylor had law enforcement ready for any post-game shenanigans, but to everyone's surprise, the violence came long before the game ended. Normally, the A&M cadets would perform at halftime and show off their military calisthenics. This year, the entire corps did not come to the game, so with only 400 cadets in attendance, they decided not to perform. However, dressed as fake cadets, some Baylor men took to the field and made fun of the military routine of their rivals. This caused blood to boil among the Aggie attendees. Then, to make matters worse, a Ford vehicle full of Baylor women came out onto the field touting signs with previous Baylor football scores on them. Two cadets, later identified as W.L. Lee and G.L. Hart, hopped onto the field and sprinted towards the moving vehicle. Lee dove into the car window and grabbed the steering wheel, jostling the car and causing one of the women to fall off the back. The Baylor men took to the field to protect their women, and that's when mayhem ensued. Not only were punches thrown, but parts of wooden chairs were used as weapons. One cadet, Charles Milo Sessoms, was struck by a chair on the left side of his head near midfield, falling flat to the ground. Cadet William Moores Jr. carried him to the first aid station, where the band quelled the riot by playing the Star-Spangled Banner. Charles Sessoms was taken to the Providence Sanitarium. The doctors detected a skull fracture, but medicine had little to offer Charles. Unfortunately, due to a blood clot, he sadly passed the following day. Despite an investigation by a national detective agency, the man who struck the fatal blow was never found. Relations between the two schools soured in the wake of these events, especially after the Baylor and A&M presidents released a joint statement sharing the blame for the incident. Baylor and A&M would not compete in any capacity for 5 years after this tragic event. Author T.G. Webb captured the full story and outlined the suspects in his book, Battle of the Brazos, a Texas football rivalry, a riot, and a murder. Side note, Baylor won that game, 20-9. Fire at Toomer's Corner. As mentioned in the Harvey Updike entry, his crime was not the only attack on Toomer's Corner. Following Auburn's win over LSU in 2016, Joachim Wiest, a 29-year-old German man, was seen setting one of the trees on Toomer's Corner ablaze through the toilet paper hanging off of the tree. Though some fans tried to catch Wiest, he managed to get away, but not for long as he was quickly apprehended by police. Witnesses reported that Wiest was heavily intoxicated and might have not even been a college football fan. He entered a guilty plea to felony first-degree criminal mischief in Lee County Circuit Court. When asked if he had any comments, he simply said, "I'm sorry." Peruna's dark past. Peruna is the name of the mascot of the Southern Methodist University Mustangs, or SMU for short. In October of 1934, Peruna I was taken up to New York for SMU's contest against Fordham. When the two mascots of the teams were put together, the Fordham Ram got too close and Peruna gave it a swift kick, instantly unaliving the ram. This has been the one and only cause of a mascot unaliving another mascot in all of college history. Peruna has one of the most violent track records of any mascot. It attempted to mount the Texas Tech horse mascot multiple times and kicked Bevo, the Texas mascot, sending it to the ground. It even delayed a game in 2022 by defecating on the playing field. Crab legs. Before getting to this story, it's important to know the story behind Florida State quarterback Jameis Winston. Playing from 2012 through 2014, his most prestigious college season came in 2013, where he threw for 4,000 yards and scored 40 touchdowns. He led the Seminoles to the national championship and a perfect 14-0 season after beating Auburn. Along with this, he would be given the Heisman Trophy along with many other accolades. He was also a baseball player for the Seminoles during this time. During the offseason before the 2014 season, Winston was highlighted in some legal troubles when he was cited for allegedly taking seafood from a Tallahassee grocery store without paying, specifically $32 worth of crab legs and crawfish. Leon County Sheriff Michael Wood said that 20-year-old Winston ordered the food at a deli in the Tallahassee, Florida area, Publix, on Tuesday night. After receiving the order, he left the store without paying. Winston, in a signed statement, said that he would take full responsibility for the, quote, unfortunate incident. However, he later claimed that the crab legs were actually given to him for free. However, Publix, the store in question, refuted this claim. As a punishment for his crime, he completed 20 hours of community service and was suspended briefly from the baseball team. LSU Party. During the ending of the 2022 season, LSU receiver Kayshon Boutte was in hot water, following allegations of his involvement in a party, among others. The Old Row Texas A&M social media account posted a supposed message involving a rumor that there was a party during LSU's stay in Atlanta ahead of the SEC championship game against the Georgia Bulldogs. The message said that there were at least 5 participants identified, Boutte being among them. Other rumored participants included members of the coaching staff and recruiting department. Nothing actually came from these rumors, however, and none of the parties in question received any sort of punishment based on these allegations. There really isn't any other layer to these allegations other than what was posted, but sometimes weird things happen when you think with your dick instead of your brain. Regardless, you be the judge. Kansas football money laundering. In the summer of 2010, an independent investigation was launched against athletics of the University of Kansas in regards to a possible massive scam taking place in the sports programs. The investigation, conducted by a Wichita law firm, showed that 5 former Kansas athletics staffers and a consultant sold or used at least 17,609 basketball tickets, 2,181 football tickets, and a number of parking passes and other passes for personal purposes. On November 18, 2010, the 5 employees were indicted on federal charges of conspiring to steal more than $2 million and possibly up to $3 million worth of tickets to Kansas athletic events. Some of the conspirators had some level of authority in the Kansas ticket office. The indictment alleges that in 2005, Charlotte Blueblaw began stealing season tickets for KU athletic events. She gave the tickets to Ben Kirkland, Rodney Jones, Cassie Lubish, Brandon Simmons, and Jason Jeffries to sell at third parties. As a result, the conspirators made $3 million to $5 million. They used various tactics to spread the tickets, including entering false information to computers meant to prevent stolen tickets, paid kickbacks to third parties not connected to the ticket office, and had checks written to third parties not connected to the ticket office. Along with these suspects, 10 more were indicted with at least minor level of involvement in the grand money laundering scheme, including distribution of illegal drugs. The fate of some of the suspects involved is unknown, but many faced up to 20 years in prison for their actions. Some fans speculate that by the will of the football gods, these actions caused the collapse of Kansas football. But again, I'll leave that to your jurisdiction. Hookum is a sign of Satan. The Hookum Sign, also known as the horns or devil's horns, has been associated with Satan in a few different ways. In 2005, President George W. Bush performed the Hookum Sign with his right hand. In Norway, raising the index and pinky fingers while holding up the right hand is a gesture that can have satanic connotations. So, some Norwegians thought that President George W. Bush was saluting Satan. The same factor came into play 20 years earlier, as in 1985, 5 Americans were arrested for dancing and making the Hookum Sign in front of the Vatican due to its satanic connotations. Many metal bands use the hand sign known as the Sign of the Horns. It is most well known with Black Sabbath, but many other bands use this during concerts. Of course, we know the Texas Longhorns use this sign as a hand signal to employ a greeting consisting of the phrase Hookum or Hookum Horns. The gesture is meant to approximate the shape of the head and horns of the Texas mascot, the Texas Longhorn Bevo. The lone exception is rival fan bases such as the Oklahoma Sooners use the horns down signal to mock the hand signal. Despite this, the signal has undergone significant levels of controversy and has been seen as offensive in some cultures and religions. No significant movements have been made to change the sign or ban it from Texas football events. However, this isn't the case for horns down, as it has been pushed to be penalized by officials in the SEC. Time will tell if something else happens along these lines. Ray Grykar. Ray Grykar was the name of a district attorney through the 1980s, 1990s, and early 2000s. In 1980, Grykar moved to State College, Pennsylvania, where his wife had taken a job at Penn State University. He opted to become a stay-at-home dad to his young daughter following the move. However, Central County District Attorney David E. Grine offered Grykar an assistant position, which he accepted. Grykar would take over an open position as the incumbent district attorney. He won the election by a margin of 600 votes. He was re-elected in 1989, 1993, 1997, and 2001. One of his cases just so happened to be the infamous Jerry Sandusky, who by this point needs no introduction. However, to the surprise of the public, Grykar did not persecute Sandusky for his actions. This would be the end of the story if this was all that happened, but this is far from the case. At 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time on April 15, 2005, shortly after Grykar's retirement, Grykar called his girlfriend, Patty Fornicola, to inform her that he was driving through the Brush Valley area northeast of Central Hall. Grykar failed to return home, and late that evening, Fornicola reported him missing. The following day, investigators identified Grykar's red Mini Cooper in the parking lot of an antique store in Lewisburg. The car contained his county-issued cell phone, but not his laptop, computer, keys, or wallet. Police and family members noted that the location of the vehicle, adjacent to 2 bridges over the Susquehanna River, bore some similarities to the location of Grykar's older brother, Roy, who disappeared in 1996. Roy's disappearance was not for long, however, as his body was found a week later in the Great Miami River. Despite a statewide investigation ensuing, Grykar was declared legally dead. There are 3 theories as to what happened to Grykar. Theory number 1, he committed not alive, just as his brother did. This seemed odd since Grykar had no medical history of depression or of suicidal thoughts. He was also reportedly looking forward to his upcoming retirement. Theory number 2, foul play was involved, as Grykar's disappearance might be linked to Jonathan Luna, an assistant U.S. attorney who was found dead in a Lancaster County creek in December of 2003. Suggestions were also made that Grykar's decision to decline to prosecute Sandusky for child sexual abuse might be linked to his disappearance. Grykar's own family came under suspicion. Both his girlfriend and his stepdaughter were asked to take polygraphs by the police, which they both passed. Theory number 3, Grykar faked his not alive and chose to start a new life using an elaborate plan. Multiple sightings of Grykar were reported after his disappearance, most notably in a bar in Wilkes Bar, where both the bartender and the off-duty police officer claimed to have seen him watching a baseball game. It has also been suggested that Grykar may have taken off to Central Europe, as he is semi-fluent in Russian and fluent in Slovenian. There has been no evidence of any of these things being true, and Grykar has been currently missing over 19 years. Haney Catchings. Haney Catchings is a former college football coach. Catchings was the 16th head football coach at Prairie View A&M University in Prairie View, Texas, and held that position for 3 seasons, from 1987 until 1989. His overall coaching record at Prairie View was 8-19. He only put together one team with an even record when the 1988 team finished 5-5. During the 1989 season, Catchings was accused of pressuring his players to abandon their studies in favor of football. According to multiple players, Catchings withheld textbooks and financial aid until players proved themselves on the field. As a result, 43 players on the 55-man roster had grade point averages below the NCAA minimum of 2.0. The players demanded that Catchings be fired. In May of 1989, Prairie View shuttered its entire athletic program except for track and field due to massive financial problems. A month later, the Houston Chronicle reported that around $100,000 was missing from the athletic department's account. Eventually, Catchings was charged with filing fraudulent expense reports. In 1991, he pleaded guilty to felony and misdemeanor charges related to the scam. He was sentenced to 5 years probation in order to pay $1,500 in fines and restitution. Ahead of the team's planned return to the gridiron in 1991, school officials sent a letter to 30,000 alumni asking for donations. However, only 150 people responded, not nearly enough to fund scholarships for the football team. Prairie View would go on to lose 80 consecutive games from 1989 to 1998, dating back to the final 2 losses of Catchings' last season. This would be known as the longest losing streak in NCAA history. Catchings had a final record of 19-41, which by the way is still better than Ellis Johnson. C.B. Johnston's second life. Clement Bernard, quote, Johnny Johnston Sr., was a football and baseball player and the former head coach of the Appalachian State Mountaineers from 1929 through 1932. In 1933, Johnston sent a postcard to his wife from Zanesville, Ohio, stating that he was on his way to Chicago, Illinois, to publish a book after being fired as head football coach of Appalachian State Teachers College the previous year. No one heard from him after that. The significant difference between this case and the Ray Rykar case is regarding the dates of the incidents. There is no evidence to what actually happened to Johnston. Because there was no body found, it is very possible that Johnston faked his disappearance and started a second life due to the possible embarrassment of his firing at Appalachian State. This is the only ongoing theory to a mystery that is likely to never be solved. Jim Mora knew Tupac. James Lawrence Mora is a former defensive back for the Washington Huskies and a current college football coach. He coached for many programs, including the Atlanta Falcons, Seattle Seahawks, UCLA, and now serves as the current head coach of the Yukon Huskies. Back in January of 2022, a story came out from running back Najee Harris that while in high school, Jim Mora told him that he knew the identity of the one who not alived Tupac. The story made several rounds on social media after police arrested Dwayne Kef D. Davis in connection to the 1996 murder of the rapper. The allegation on Mora's end broke out from Rob Cassidy, a reporter from Rivals who was allegedly told by Harris what Mora had said. Regardless, most believe this to be a fabrication, including Mora himself, as he called it a, quote, complete fabrication. When Cassidy asked Harris if Mora told him who the killer was, Harris smiled, quote, and said, something that was a non-answer. It was a throwaway comment in a larger conversation. What do you think? Does Jim Mora really know what happened? Jimmy Nippert. Jimmy Nippert is the name of the center offensive lineman of the 1922 and 1923 Cincinnati Bearcats. During the matchup against Miami of Ohio in 1923, one of the spiked cleats gashed open his leg, creating an open wound that got quickly covered in mud. Nonetheless, Cincinnati won the game 23-0. After the cleat slit his leg, he, quote, did not realize the gravity of the injury and played until the end of the game, according to the Cincinnati Times-Star. Jimmy's condition worsened over time, and since sulfa drugs and penicillin were more than a decade away from common use, he developed an infection from which he would not recover. He would pass on Christmas Day of 1923 from what would be considered to be, quote, blood poisoning. This was reportedly due to having been infected by droppings left after a pre-game chicken race. Jimmy's death clearly affected his grandfather, who donated $250,000 to accelerate production on a new stadium for Cincinnati and provide a, quote, memorial to his grandson. The University News explained, quote, "Conditions in the agreement provided that a fully equipped dispensary be a part of the bowl to ensure that expert and immediate attention be given any students injured on the football field. As of currently, the name of Cincinnati Stadium, quote, Nippert Stadium, remains." Hard Rock Stadium on Native American burial ground. Hard Rock Stadium is known as the home stadium of the Miami Hurricanes. It is believed to be built on a site that was once a burial ground for the Tequista Native American tribe. In 1985, during the construction of what was then called the Sun Life Stadium, human remains and artifacts dating back to around 800 AD were discovered on the land. These remains are believed to belong to the Tequista tribe, who inhabited the area until the 1700s. Following the discovery, archaeologists were brought in to remove the remains and artifacts, allowing construction to proceed. Some associate the stadium's construction on the site with a supposed, quote, curse on the Miami Dolphins, an NFL team. This points to particularly the lack of Super Bowl wins since the stadium opened in 1987. Many now believe that both the Miami Dolphins and the Miami Hurricanes are cursed by the tribe. As of now, though, there is no significant evidence to back this up. Logan Young. Logan Young was a Memphis, Tennessee businessman and a booster for the University of Alabama football program. During the 2000 season, an assistant football coach at Trezevant High School in Memphis claimed that Young had paid Ling Lang, the Trezevant head football coach, approximately $150,000 to encourage defensive lineman Albert Means to sign with Alabama. Following the investigation by the NCAA, Alabama received a 5-year probation, a 2-year bowl ban, and a reduced number of scholarships that the university could award, limiting them to 21 scholarships over the next 3 years. Alabama permanently disassociated itself from Young in 2000. Alabama not only banned him from any involvement with the athletic program, but stripped him of his $40,000 luxury box at Bryant-Denny Stadium and canceled an insurance policy that would have paid $500,000 towards the Paul Bear Bryant Museum on campus upon Young's death. In 2005, Young was found guilty on his scheme, and he was sentenced to 6 months in jail, but continued to plead that he was not guilty. On April 11, 2006, Young was found not alive in his home in Memphis. Originally thought to be a homicide due to the large amount of blood found throughout the house, local police concluded that Young's death was accidental. According to Homicide Lieutenant Joe Scott in a press conference, Young tripped while carrying a salad and soft drink up a set of stairs and hit his head on an iron railing. The fall onto the railing opened a large gash across the top of Young's head, causing him to drop to the floor, bleeding profusely. After lying on the floor for some time, Young got up and walked bleeding through the several rooms of the house before ending up in his second-floor bathroom. According to Scott, Young walked past several telephones but didn't place an emergency call. Some say because of the seemingly odd frame of events that this was a setup and the passing of Young was actually a homicide initiated by Alabama executives themselves to keep him quiet. No actual evidence has been presented to fortify this claim, but some still believe that this was indeed intentional. The SEC is the Dynasty. Many college football fans are aware of the Dynasty during Nick Saban's long stay at Alabama. However, some are going as far to say that the SEC in itself is the dynasty that will control college football. In fact, it has been for the longest time. The SEC was the first NCAA Division I conference to have a football championship game in 1992 and was also a founding member of the Bowl Championship Series. Over the course of 25 years, since the beginning of the BCS, the SEC has won 15 of the 25 titles, with 6 different teams carrying home the trophy. Tennessee in 1998, LSU in 2003, 2007, and 2019, Florida in 2006 and 2008, Alabama in 2009, 2011, 2012, 2015, 2017, and 2020, Auburn in 2010, and finally, Georgia in 2021 and 2022. Throughout the 21st century, the SEC has been a prime focus in sports media, with growing allegations of favoritism from committees who decide who goes to play for the national championship. This is citing from the quote, snub of Utah in the 2009 BCS Championship and the snub of Florida State in the 2023 college football playoffs. However, despite outlooks from other fan bases, there is no real evidence to suggest that there is SEC favoritism or that the SEC themselves is the dynasty. Teams get better and worse over time. Take last year for example. Michigan isn't an SEC school and they defied all odds by beating Alabama in the Rose Bowl. However, like many entries on this list, only time will truly tell if this is right. College football is dying. Due to the nature of college football and the ever-changing landscape of college sports as we know it, many believe the sport of college football is heading down a dark path of no return. NIL is the main factor in this belief. Some say that because of NIL, college football players are no longer just players, but professional athletes, which turn them into something akin to the NFL rather than a contribution to college football. Because of branding, bias in the media, talking heads, and other shenanigans before, during, and after the season, some college football fans refuse to watch college football anymore as it has become a corporate empire that no longer cares about the student athlete and only cares about... Man, this is some bullshit. College football will always remain college football. Money has always been a part of the sport. In fact, money is a part of everything. I know it's not up to me to have my own opinions, but if you're one of these people that won't watch college football because it is changing, well then what are you doing here? You obviously still like it, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this college football video then, would you? It's very true that the college football landscape is changing. For better or for worse, it doesn't matter. This is still the same sport that, while being layered in controversy and conspiracy, it's also ignited by a feeling of unity. There is no sport in the world that can compare to the chaotic and fun nature of college football. There are die-hard college football fans all across the country who would be willing to do anything just to watch some college football action. The energy, tradition, and fan bases are just some of the reasons as to why this sport is adored by so many people. You and I are the same in that sense. We love college football, and even if college football dies, I will always stay true to my word. I will always be a fan of college football, and I hope you will be too. Well, that's it everybody. We covered a grand total of 239 entries throughout this iceberg, and somehow I did not get carpal tunnel. So kudos to myself for that. With that out of the way, I wanted to take a minute to thank all of you guys for watching this series. None of this would be worth it without the loyal support of my viewers. It's been a joy to learn all of these things about college football, and hopefully you learned a thing or two along the way. I'm aware that I was not perfect with this, and I had some errors along the way, which I definitely know now because of your help, and so I can thank you for that too. I hope you stick around for the 2024 college football season, as I'll be covering the season as it goes, giving my thoughts as well as providing entertaining, funny, and maybe rage-filled videos throughout the fall. So do me a solid if you can, and support the channel by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Each one goes a long way in moving this channel forward. So until the next video, whenever that may be, thank you all for watching the College Football Iceberg.